The first tendrils of dawn, impossibly soft and promising, unfurled over Maple Creek. They painted the eastern sky in washes of rose and lavender, then spilled gold over the dew-kissed leaves of the maple trees lining Elm Street. A gentle breeze, carrying the faint scent of pine and freshly cut grass, rustled through the branches, a whispered lullaby for a world just awakening. For Ethan Vance, the tranquility felt like a cruel deception. His old sedan, a faithful companion through countless school runs and weekend getaways, purred to a stop in the driveway, its engine a low thrum against the profound quiet. He killed the ignition, and the sudden silence in the car was deafening, amplifying the quietude of the neighborhood. He had stayed late at school, grading a particularly challenging batch of history essays, the weight of the coming semester already pressing on him. Elara, always understanding, had texted him to not rush, to take his time, a little heart emoji winking at the end. That was just Elara, selfless, radiant, a constant source of warmth. Swinging his backpack over his shoulder, Ethan stepped out into the crisp morning air. The familiar ritual of retrieving the morning paper, still tightly rolled near the mailbox, briefly offered a sense of normalcy. But as his gaze drifted towards the house, a prickle of unease, sharp and immediate, pierced the placid facade of the morning. The front door, a sturdy oak that Elara had lovingly repainted a cheerful robin's egg blue just last spring, was slightly ajar. Not wide open, not forced, but just enough to reveal a sliver of the dimly lit foyer within, like a hesitant breath caught in the morning mist. "Elara," he called out, his voice usually resonant, sounding thin and reedy in the quiet. He waited, listening. No soft footsteps padding down the stairs, no cheerful hum from the kitchen, no familiar, "Good morning, sleepyhead," that usually greeted him. Only the persistent, unnerving silence. A second call, louder this time, clawed at the air. Still nothing. His heart began a frantic, erratic beat against his ribs. Pushing the door open further, it groaned faintly on its hinges, a sound usually unnoticed, but now amplified into a shriek in the profound stillness. The house, their sanctuary, felt wrong. The air was heavy, stagnant, devoid of the vibrant life Elara infused into every corner. No scent of her chamomile tea, no faint aroma of paint from her studio, no gentle murmur of classical music she often played while she worked. It was a vacuum, cold and vast. He moved through the foyer, his breath catching in his throat. The framed photographs on the wall, their wedding day, a silly selfie from their trip to the coast, a picture of Elara beaming with her students, seemed to gaze at him with a silent, questioning sorrow. He edged into the living room, his eyes scanning for any sign, any explanation for the unsettling quiet. The first hint of true disturbance was subtle, almost ignorable. A throw pillow askew on the sofa, not quite Elara's meticulous neatness. Then, his gaze fell on the small, antique side table next to the armchair, the one Elara had painstakingly restored last month, stripping away layers of old varnish to reveal the rich, original wood. It was overturned. A small ceramic vase that had held a single sprig of dried lavender now shattered on the rug, its fragments sparkling malevolently under the incoming sunlight. A cold dread began to solidify in his gut. "Elara!" His voice was a strangled whisper now, laced with a fear he refused to acknowledge. He moved into the kitchen, the familiar space where they had shared so many laughter-filled meals, where Elara would often hum while preparing her elaborate, colorful dishes. Here, the chaos was undeniable. Cabinet doors hung open, their contents spilling onto the tile floor. A flour bag had burst, dusting the counters and the small, wooden bird Elara had carved for him with a ghostly white layer. Their coffee maker lay on its side, its glass carafe smashed. A drawer, usually filled with their silverware, was yanked open and empty. The scene screamed violation, a desecration of their peaceful home. His breath hitched. The air felt thick, difficult to draw into his lungs. He wanted to scream, to run, but his feet were rooted to the spot, compelled by a terrifying magnet to find her, to understand. He didn't want to see what he knew, deep down, he would find. Each step he took now was a conscious act of will, pushing through an invisible, suffocating resistance. The stairs creaked under his weight, each groan echoing the frantic hammering of his heart. The bedroom door was open, wide open. It had been their sanctuary, a place of shared dreams and quiet intimacy. Now, a chill emanated from within. Ethan paused at the threshold, his hand trembling as he reached for the light switch. The overhead fixture hummed to life, bathing the room in a stark, unforgiving glow. And then he saw her. Elara lay on the floor beside the bed, a tangled heap of her favorite nightgown, the one with the soft floral print. Her usually vibrant auburn hair was fanned out around her head, matted and dark. Beneath her, a vast, terrifying bloom of crimson stained the pale carpet, soaking into the fibers like an evil flower. Her eyes, usually sparkling with an unshakable optimism, were open and vacant, staring up at the ceiling, unseeing. His gaze dropped to her stomach, the beautiful, swelling curve that had been a testament to their love, a promise of future joy. It was still, utterly, terribly still. The vibrant life that had pulsed within, the gentle flutter he had felt against his hand, just last night, had been extinguished. Lily. Their Lily. A choked gasp tore from his throat, a sound raw and animalistic. The world tilted, the floor beneath him threatening to give way. His knees buckled, sending him crashing to the floor beside her. He reached out a trembling hand, hovering over her pale cheek, afraid to touch, afraid to confirm the cold reality. But he had to. His fingers brushed against her skin. It was cold. Too cold. No. No. This couldn't be real. This was a nightmare. A cruel, elaborate trick of his sleep-deprived mind. He shook her gently, desperate, pleading. Elara? Honey? Wake up, please. His voice was a broken whisper, a mere puff of air against the vast silence that had swallowed her. But she didn't stir. Her chest didn't rise and fall. There was no life, no warmth, no flicker of the bright spirit that had always illuminated his world. The profound, unfathomable emptiness of her absence crashed over him, a tidal wave of grief so immense it threatened to rip him apart. Shock, cold, and absolute, froze his senses, turning his blood to ice. Disbelief warred with the horrifying evidence before his eyes. Then, a searing, white-hot rage ignited within him, burning through the numbness. Rage at the sheer, senseless brutality of it. Rage at whoever had dared to touch her, to harm her, to steal their future. And beneath it all, an agony so deep, so primal, that it threatened to consume him whole. His hand, shaking uncontrollably, fumbled for his phone in his pocket. The screen seemed impossibly bright, the numbers blurring through a sudden film of tears. He pressed 911, the simple act a monumental effort, each breath a struggle. He tried to speak, but only guttural sounds escaped, a pained moan. Hello, 911. What's your emergency? A calm, disembodied voice asked. My wife, Elara. She's. He couldn't form the words. The full horror of it, the definitive, irreversible finality, struck him with the force of a physical blow. He crumpled forward, his forehead resting against the cold floor beside her, his body racked with convulsive sobs that tore through the quiet morning, shattering the false serenity of Maple Creek into a million irreparable pieces. Weeks before, the Maple Creek Community Center buzzed with a different kind of energy, a vibrant hum orchestrated by Elara Vance. At 29, Elara was a whirlwind of compassionate creativity, her presence a balm to the often troubled souls who sought her guidance. Her small studio within the center, smelling faintly of turpentine and sunshine, was a haven. Today, it was filled with the gentle clinking of glass beads and the soft murmur of young voices. See? Elara's voice, melodious and reassuring, guided the shaky hand of a shy teenager named Maya. Even though this glass shard is broken, it still catches the light beautifully. When we combine it with these other pieces, these other fragments of your story, it tells a new, stronger story. A story of resilience. Maya, a girl with shadowed eyes and a history of self-harm, nodded slowly, carefully threading a bright blue bead onto a wire, transforming it into a delicate wind chime. Elara's philosophy, "every crack reveals light," wasn't just a catchy phrase, it was the bedrock of her being. She believed that life's most profound beauty often emerged from its deepest wounds, that discarded pieces held the potential for new, extraordinary meaning. She lived it, breathed it, instilled it in her patients, especially the young ones grappling with their own fractured realities. Her eyes, the color of warm honey, would crinkle at the corners when she smiled, a genuine, radiating warmth that disarmed even the most guarded individuals. Her auburn hair, usually tied back with a colorful scarf, occasionally escaped in wisps around her face, framing a smile that could soothe any storm. Her greatest joy, however, resided beyond the studio walls, within the embrace of her own home and the love she shared with Ethan. Their 3-year wedding anniversary had just passed, celebrated with a quiet dinner at their favorite Italian bistro, followed by an evening curled on the sofa, reminiscing about their first clumsy dance and the exhilarating promise of forever. Ethan, a high school history teacher with a quiet strength and a deep-seated appreciation for her unique spirit, was her anchor. He often joked that while he taught children about the past, Elara taught them how to build a brighter future from its remnants. Their world, for the past 7 months, had been consumed by the joyous anticipation of their first child, a daughter, Lily. They had spent countless evenings poring over baby books, assembling a tiny crib in a nursery painted a cheerful buttercup yellow, and folding miniature onesies with trembling, excited hands. Elara would often trace gentle circles on her swelling belly, whispering stories to the life growing within, her face alight with an almost ethereal glow. Ethan would watch her, a profound sense of wonder and gratitude swelling in his chest, knowing he was witnessing the purest form of creation, a testament to their love. Beyond her work at the community center, Elara nurtured a passion project in her small, sunlit studio at home. It was a space that mirrored her soul, organized chaos, filled with reclaimed wood, chipped pottery, discarded glass, and an array of paints and brushes. Here, she practiced her philosophy on a tangible scale, transforming forgotten pieces of furniture, old picture frames, or broken ceramics into vibrant, unique works of art. A chipped porcelain plate became a mosaic on a resurrected tabletop. A discarded, rusty metal gate found new life as a whimsical garden sculpture. Each piece was a testament to her belief that nothing was truly beyond repair. Nothing was without inherent beauty waiting to be unearthed. Ethan loved to watch her work, her brow furrowed in concentration, her hands moving with a practiced grace, her spirit radiating an infectious joy. Their lives were not confined to their own world, however. Both Elara and Ethan were deeply woven into the fabric of Maple Creek's community. They volunteered at the local soup kitchen on weekends, tutored underprivileged students, and often organized art workshops for at-risk youth. Elara, especially, had a knack for connecting with teenagers others had written off, seeing past their hardened exteriors to the vulnerable, struggling souls beneath. She saw potential where others saw only problems, and her unwavering belief often sparked a tiny flame of hope in the most desolate hearts. They were, in the quiet, unassuming way of truly good people, the very essence of community, building bridges, mending broken pieces, always finding the light. The blare of sirens shattered the morning quiet, cutting through the heavy air with an unforgiving urgency. Red and blue lights flashed, painting the maple trees in a macabre, pulsating glow. Squad cars, an ambulance, and an unmarked sedan converged on Elm Street, their presence a stark, violent intrusion into the suburban idyll. Neighbors, drawn by the commotion, peered from behind curtains, their faces etched with a mix of fear and morbid curiosity. Whispers began to ripple through the budding morning. Detective Miller, a man whose gray hair belied the sharpness of his eyes and the quiet intensity of his focus, stepped out of the unmarked car. His tweed jacket, though slightly rumpled, gave him an air of seasoned authority. He surveyed the scene with a practiced, weary gaze, his face grim. This wasn't his first time staring into the abyss of human cruelty, but the sight of the ambulance crew solemnly entering the house, followed by the uniformed officers, sent a familiar chill down his spine. A pregnant woman? God. Inside, the house, once a home, was now a crime scene. Forensic technicians, moving with a methodical, almost robotic efficiency, began their meticulous work. They wore white jumpsuits and gloves, their tools laid out with clinical precision. Cameras flashed, documenting every overturned object, every shattered fragment. Bags and tags appeared, marking potential evidence. A footprint on the floor. A faint smudge on a window pane. The air, heavy with the metallic tang of blood, grew thick with the acrid scent of chemicals. Ethan sat on the curb outside, wrapped in a thin blanket provided by a sympathetic officer, his body still trembling uncontrollably. His face was ashen, his eyes glazed over, staring straight ahead but seeing nothing. He watched, detached, as the world he knew was systematically dismantled, catalogued, and investigated. A kind-faced officer tried to offer him water, but the glass shook violently in his hand, sloshing over the rim. Detective Miller approached him, his voice low and calm, devoid of judgment. "Mr. Vance, I'm Detective Miller. I need you to tell me as best you can what happened this morning. From the moment you arrived home." Ethan tried to speak, but his throat felt constricted, his voice a raw, sandpaper rasp. He recounted the sequence of events, the slightly ajar door, the silence, the growing dread, the horror of discovery. Each word was a struggle, each memory a fresh stab of pain. He watched Miller's eyes, keen and observing, noting every tremor in his voice, every hesitation. "Did you notice anything unusual outside, Mr. Vance? Any strange cars? Anyone walking around?" Miller asked, his gaze sweeping over the quiet street. Ethan shook his head numbly. "No. It was just like any other morning, quiet." "And the door being ajar," Miller continued, his pen poised over his notepad, "was that normal? Did your wife often leave it unlocked?" A fresh wave of guilt, sharp and searing, washed over Ethan. "No, never. Elara was always so careful, especially now, with the baby." He trailed off, the word baby catching in his throat, a fresh wave of tears blurring his vision. "Unless sometimes she'd leave the back door open for a little bit if she was working in her garden, just for a quick minute." Miller made a note, his expression unreadable. "And what about valuables? Anything obviously missing?" Ethan's mind raced, trying to recall. "My wallet was on the dresser, her jewelry box. It's usually in the top drawer of her nightstand." But the thought was too much. Valuables. For this? The initial observations from the uniformed officers began to filter back to Miller. No signs of forced entry. The back door, upon closer inspection, seemed to have been left unlocked, perhaps even slightly ajar, a small, innocent oversight that had invited unthinkable tragedy. The brutality of the act, the senseless violence against a pregnant woman, all for what appeared to be a random, opportunistic robbery for petty cash and some small jewelry, sent a ripple of disgust and shock through even the most hardened investigators. Maple Creek, a town where the biggest crimes were usually speeding tickets and stolen garden gnomes, had just been violated in the most profound and horrifying way. The sun, now higher in the sky, cast long, distorted shadows across the once peaceful street, each shadow seeming to stretch out from the Vance home, a dark stain spreading over the tranquil dawn. The sterile hum of the fluorescent lights in the Maple Creek Police Department's temporary command center was a jarring contrast to the silence that had fallen over the Vance home. Detective Miller stood over a large table strewn with forensic photographs, his brow furrowed. A pen tapped rhythmically against his notepad. Around him, a team of officers and forensic specialists worked with quiet intensity, their voices hushed, their movements precise. The initial shock had given way to the methodical grind of investigation. "Anything concrete from the back door?" Miller asked, not looking up as Sergeant Reyes approached, a thin file in his hand. Reyes shook his head, a sigh escaping him. "No signs of forced entry, sir. The lock wasn't tampered with. It looks like it was simply left ajar, or perhaps unlatched. A tragic oversight." He paused, his voice softening slightly. "The victim, Mrs. Vance, she was known for her gardening. Often left the back door open when she was working outside. according to neighbors. Miller grimaced. An opportunistic grab. The worst kind. And the interior? We've got a partial boot print from the kitchen floor, near the spilled flour, Reyes reported. Forensics is analyzing the tread pattern. Not a common one. And a faint, latent fingerprint on the windowsill in the master bedroom, likely where they exited. Very smudged, but usable for comparison, if we get lucky. The crime scene photos laid bare the brutality. Overturned furniture, scattered contents, and then the chilling image of Elara, her life extinguished. The contrast between the chaos in the kitchen and the brutal stillness of the bedroom was a testament to the haste and desperation of the intruders. The small, antique side table, Elara's proud restoration project, now a splintered wreck. The shattered ceramic vase, its pieces reflecting the camera flash like fallen tears. One photo showed Elara's purse, dumped unceremoniously on the living room rug, its contents spilled. The wallet, however, was missing. Her driver's license, a few bills, and more importantly, her credit cards. Check recent activity on Mrs. Vance's cards, Miller instructed. Anything, even a small purchase. The days that followed blurred into a relentless pursuit. Miller, with his quiet intensity, became a fixture in the precinct, fueled by lukewarm coffee and an unwavering determination. The leads, initially sparse, began to materialize, like faint whispers growing into a chorus. A tip came in from a nearby gas station on the outskirts of Maple Creek. Our overnight guy remembered seeing something odd, the manager explained, nervously tapping his fingers on the counter. 3 people, real early, maybe 3, 4 in the morning. Acted shifty. They paid cash, but one of them stood out. Had a bright blue hoodie, kinda worn, with a distinctive white stripe on the sleeve. Miller's heart gave a jolt. Do you have surveillance? The manager led them to a cramped office, and Miller watched the grainy black and white footage rewind. There they were, 3 figures, huddled together near a beat-up sedan. One, taller and broader, with a distinctive swagger, wore exactly the blue hoodie described. The white stripe, frayed at the edges, was clearly visible. It wasn't much, but it was a face, a jacket, a car, a starting point. Further investigation unearthed a small, anonymous transaction at an ATM machine almost 15 miles away, just an hour after the estimated time of Elara's death. A small withdrawal from Elara's checking account. The machine's security camera, though older and less clear, captured the same distinctive blue hoodie and the same build. The image was passed around, analyzed, enhanced. Then came the break they desperately needed. A call from a local pawn shop, Maple Creek Gold and Silver Exchange, about a mile from the ATM. The owner, a grizzled man named Frank, had been watching the local news, and something clicked. Yeah, I remember him, Frank grumbled, rubbing his chin. 2 guys, 1 woman. Came in yesterday morning, looked like they hadn't slept, wanted to sell some junk jewelry, said it was their grandma's, needed cash for a family emergency. He rolled his eyes, clearly used to such stories. Nothing fancy, really. A couple of silver rings, a small gold chain with a ceramic pendant. Kinda unusual. Looked handmade. Miller leaned forward. Ceramic pendant? Can you describe it? Frank squinted, thinking. Yeah, it was mosaic-like. Little pieces of broken, colored ceramic, all glued together on a silver backing. Sounded odd, but the craftsmanship was good. They were in a hurry. A cold dread mixed with a surge of adrenaline hit Miller. Elara Vance had been known for her art, her philosophy of turning broken things into beauty. Ethan had mentioned a similar necklace in his grief-stricken testimony, a unique piece Elara had crafted for herself. This was it. Within 24 hours, working with the pawn shop's transaction records and the gas station footage, they had names. Marcus Brick Jones, Lena Shaw, and Diego Ghost Ramirez, petty criminals, known to the regional police force for a string of break-ins and small-time drug offenses. Their rap sheets painted a picture of increasing desperation, escalating from shoplifting to home invasions. Maple Creek was just their latest and most tragic target. The arrests were swift, almost anticlimactic after the intense pressure of the preceding days. Marcus Jones, a hulking figure with a shaved head and cold, dead eyes, was found holed up in a seedy motel on the highway. Lena Shaw, gaunt and nervous, and Diego Ramirez, quiet and shifty, were picked up shortly after, trying to sell more stolen goods in a neighboring town. In separate interrogation rooms, the story slowly, agonizingly, unraveled. Lena, cracking under the pressure, was the first to talk, her voice trembling, her eyes darting nervously. Diego, seeing his chances of leniency slipping away, soon followed. They painted Marcus as the ringleader, the one who planned the increasingly reckless heists. The Maple Creek house, they claimed, had been an opportunistic target. They'd seen the back door ajar and assumed it would be an easy score. She woke up. Lena choked out, her face pale. She came out of the bedroom. Marcus, he panicked. She tried to fight him. She screamed. He just hit her, over and over, to shut her up. Miller listened, his jaw tight, a familiar cold anger settling in his gut. Elara Vance, a woman who brought light to shattered lives, silenced by a mindless act of brutality, the sheer, senseless waste. Marcus, when finally cornered with their testimonies, offered a sneering, unapologetic silence. But the truth was out. The pieces of the puzzle, grim as they were, had come together. 3 lives, irrevocably linked by one horrific act, now destined for a different kind of brokenness. Justice, Miller knew, was only just beginning. The earth was damp, the sky a dull, weeping gray that seemed to mirror the collective sorrow of Maple Creek. The air hung heavy with the scent of lilies and the quiet despair of hundreds of mourners. Ethan stood by the graveside, the thin black fabric of his suit, feeling like a suffocating shroud. 2 small coffins, one slightly larger than the other, rested side by side, heartbreakingly close. Elara and Lily, his wife, his daughter, his future, buried beneath a fresh mound of earth. The funeral had been a blur of faces, hushed condolences, and well-meaning but ultimately hollow words. He had felt like a ghost, moving through a dream, disconnected from his own body. His mind replayed the morning of discovery in an endless, agonizing loop. The silence, the shattered vase, the crimson stain. Now, as the last eulogy faded into the mournful rustle of autumn leaves, a different kind of pain began to settle in. A vast, echoing emptiness that dwarfed all other emotions. It was a physical ache, a gaping hole where Alara's radiant presence and Lily's anticipated laughter should have been. He felt the weight of their absence like an anchor dragging him down into an abyss of despair. He could feel the eyes on him, 1,000 different gazes. Some were filled with profound sympathy, others with shared grief. But then there were the others, the whispers, barely audible but searing his ears. Asterisk. Why was the door unlocked? Why wasn't he home? How could he have left her? Asterisk. A fresh wave of guilt, sharp and insidious, washed over him, threatening to drown him in its toxic current. He hadn't meant to stay late. Elara had understood. But understanding offered no solace, no absolution. He had not been there. And she was gone. They were gone. The days that followed the funeral were a desolate landscape of grief. His apartment, once alive with Alara's vibrant energy, was now a tomb. Her art supplies lay untouched in her studio, the half-finished canvas on her easel, a cruel monument to interrupted dreams. Her scent, a mix of lavender and paint, still lingered faintly on her pillow, a torturous reminder of what he had lost. Sleep offered no escape, only fragmented, terrifying nightmares. Food tasted like ash. Laughter felt like a betrayal. He found himself wandering aimlessly, his mind a battlefield of conflicting emotions. Blinding rage at the perpetrators, a raw, primal scream that clawed at his throat but found no voice. Overwhelming sorrow that threatened to shatter him into a million pieces. And the suffocating guilt, a constant companion that whispered accusations in the darkest corners of his mind. He was broken, irreparably so. One evening, he stumbled into Alara's studio, the moonlight casting long, ghostly shadows across her creations. His gaze fell upon a small wooden box on her workbench, overflowing with discarded ceramic shards. He picked up a piece, a fragment of brilliant turquoise, smooth and cool against his thumb. It was then, as if a whisper carried on the autumn breeze, that Elara's voice echoed in his memory, soft and clear. Asterisk. Ethan, my love, even from the broken pieces, we can build something beautiful. Asterisk. He remembered her smile, the way her eyes crinkled when she spoke of her philosophy. She had lived it, breathed it. She had seen beauty where others saw ruin, potential where others saw only despair. She had believed, fiercely and unconditionally, in the inherent worth of every broken thing, every struggling soul. His hand instinctively reached for his neck, his fingers closing around the small ceramic pendant he always wore. It was Elara's gift to him, a miniature mosaic crafted from the very shards she salvaged, a tiny universe of fragmented colors, bound together by her loving hands, a testament to resilience, to light found in cracks. He looked at it now, truly saw it, not just as a piece of jewelry, but as a living symbol of her spirit. A faint flicker, like a distant match striking in the profound darkness, ignited within him. A fragile thought, barely formed, but tenacious. Asterisk. If she saw beauty in brokenness, then her life, her legacy, could not simply end in this ultimate brokenness. Asterisk. It had to mean something. It times had times, too. He sat on the floor amidst her tools, the scent of paint and pine filling his lungs, and the seed of a purpose began to take root. Elara had devoted her life to helping the marginalized, the struggling youth, those who felt discarded by society. She had seen their potential, their inherent light. What if he could continue that? What if he could create something, in her name, that prevented other lives from being shattered, other futures from being stolen? The idea, vague yet powerful, began to coalesce. A foundation, a program, not just for art therapy, though that would be central, but a holistic initiative. Mentorship, skill building, a safe haven for teenagers teetering on the edge, just like the ones who had taken his wife and child. He would call it the Elara Vance Legacy Project, or perhaps Lily's Light, a place where no life was deemed worthless, where every crack was an opportunity for light to shine through. He would transform their tragedy into a beacon, a living testament to Elara's unwavering belief. The path would be arduous, he knew. The grief would not simply vanish. The whispers, the judgments, the financial hurdles, the monumental effort of building something from nothing, all of it loomed large. But for the first time since that terrible dawn, a sense of direction, however faint, cut through the impenetrable fog of his despair. He stood up, the pendant still clutched in his hand, and walked to the window. Outside, the night was clear, the stars, cold and distant, offering a quiet, indifferent beauty. He looked up, a silent conversation forming in his mind. "I promise you, Elara," he whispered, his voice still raw, but laced with a new, quiet resolve. "I promise you, Lily, your lives will not be forgotten. Your light will not be extinguished. From these broken pieces, I will build something beautiful, something that shines." His eyes, still red-rimmed and shadowed with unimaginable pain, held a newfound steadiness, a glint of determination. The journey ahead was long, fraught with sorrow and doubt, but the promise, a sacred vow to the two souls he had lost, was now etched deep into his heart. He would carry their light forward, one broken piece at a time.